Speaking of building each other back up. All right.
Okay, girls.
We're back for another episode of Hotter, Older, Wiser. I'm your host, Pam Rodriguez.
And I'm your co-host, Alessandra Rodriguez. You said host this time.
Oh, I said host?
You're taking advantage.
I'm so sorry.
Going strong, you know?
I'm your co-host. Let me humble myself.
No, she's my host. She's my bigger sister. I do whatever she says.
Know who the alpha is.
Damn.
I'm kidding.
I kind of liked it.
Oh, that was so weird. Let's just not. I don't know why that came out of my mouth. I think today's topic, we decided to go down the route of female relationships and explaining kind of the impact they've made in our lives, but also how those have been the relationships that have tested us the most. But the reason is, so I just recently had my birthday dinner, and it was a very intimate dinner, and I looked around and I just wholeheartedly was really happy just looking at the caliber of women at my table. And this sounds very like...
Let me tell you something, okay? This girl, years ago,
oh God,
she had the shittiest fucking friends.
Yeah.
I was so tired of getting phone calls about like, she did this to me. And I'm like, what do you expect? Like, that's the kind of person that she is. And I was so tired of you having just shitty friends. So I'm just so happy that she's at a point where I don't have to get calls about talking about the same shitty people over and over again. So I'm just so happy that you've gotten to a point where you know how to select your friends and being more selective, and yeah.
No, and I think I've also been, it's been more on top of mind. I heard this quote several years back, and it said, you're the average of the top 5 people you surround yourself with. Mm-hmm. And since then, I think this is all going to be tied to, like, I know people go through a midlife crisis. I really think I went through a quarter of a life crisis in which it took me hitting rock bottom to rebuild myself back up. And it meant rebuilding myself up in terms of not only the men I attract and the kind of relationships I attract, but also the personal friendships that I attract. Because I do think I've been very blessed to have a sister. So I'm looking at this through the lens of I've never necessarily needed female companionship
as much because you had me.
Agreed.
Like, and we had that with each other, yeah.
Exactly. And so I do have to recognize that I think that's why my experience is going to look a little bit different, and I think my opinion is going to look a little bit different.
Sure.
But again, very reflective based upon turning 31 and looking around me and looking at who's sitting at my table. And so for that, I do want to start off with at the very root and start of my relationship with women was not good. Like you said, I do think I attracted trash, and so I was out here expecting something more at the end of the day.
And you're a people pleaser too, so you were like, if I'm just nicer and if I just like do things for people, like they'll like me, and like I can make them like me if I'm just nicer, and it did not work that way.
Agreed. And also, I do think I went through...
She was bullied.
Yeah, I went through a lot of bullying when it came to women.
Yeah.
And so I think I turned a corner, very bad realization, but at the time I thought it was the right way to go. I had gone through such severe bullying, like had to switch high schools, all of this. Mm-hmm. And so I thought that if I just became friends with the girls that nobody else was making fun of, and the girls who I thought were a little bit cooler, maybe not the nicest, but cooler, mm-hmm. I thought that I could avoid being singled out or targeted by any means. Mm. And so I do think that was the beginning of me having somewhat of a toxic relationship with women, in which I was just in it because I thought it was what I had to do to not stick out. And so I think that definitely led into a cycle of me dimming my own light and me really doubling down into my people pleasing because I just started learning how to mirror what other people wanted and expected of me. So I could very much tell what other people wanted to hear or wanted me to say or how they wanted me to behave or look like. And so
you were conforming to the person that would be in front of you. Yeah.
And it also got to a point where I almost felt like I couldn't dress as pretty or stand out.
Because you were going to have eyes on you.
I was going to have eyes on me. And I'm like, and again, it goes back to dimming my own light.
Yeah.
And so after all of that, and I also, again, my definition of what it meant to have friends was for sure having more, was quantity over quality, 100%. I really thought that if I had more people in my corner, I would be safer and I'd have people to back me.
Yeah.
And I very
It
quickly...
was a fear, like, trauma response, like, to try to...
in the weirdest way. And it wasn't even really the people that I would say... I didn't know myself. Mm-hmm. And so I also wasn't attracting people to build me up at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so I really think what I was getting to earlier, in which it really took me hitting rock bottom to break out of that, and really honing in on the kind of energy I want surrounded, or the kind of energy I want to surround myself with. Because what we also don't talk about enough is, I know we all talk about how much female relationships are super important in our lives, but I also don't think we talk about how vicious women can also be, okay? So I'm going to get to, I promise you I'm a girl's girl. I'm not just being out here being like, I'm a pick me girl. Like,
I'm just saying, be selective. You only have a limited amount of time in this lifetime. You need to be selective who you're giving it to. And that's just like with friendships, relationships. You're not going to be dating any bozo there either. You're not going to hang out with any friend either, you know? I think female relationships for me have personally been some of the most uplifting types of relationships, like even more than intimate. But it's also been some of the most deteriorating relationships I've ever had. I think dealing with the whole... I didn't have many friends. I had like a very like core group in high school, like 4 or 5 girls, but like we did not steer from that. And it was even hard to like make those friends. But once I found them, I was like, oh, these are like good people. I felt like we were like little outcasts and like living in our own bubble, and I loved it. And then like when I got to college, I went to an art school, so it was very, very different. I didn't really have friends. And you went to a normal college and had like all these friends. I was seeing you like always surrounded. And I was like, oh, like a quantity thing. I was just like, I just want to go out. I want to have plans every weekend. And I feel like I definitely sacrificed the quality. And also when you're in college and school, you kind of have to conform to like who's around you. You can't be super selective. Like when you're actually in adulthood and like actually making plans, like I'm going to see you. You have to make an effort. Be more intentional
with your time.
Yeah. So my quality definitely went down, and I just went through some like traumatic stuff with girls that like, you know, they pretend to be your friend, and then it's like they want to see you doing well, but not better than them. And that's when you have to like...
Okay, but I'm going to pause on that statement right there, because I really want to double down on that. I do think it's important to call that out specifically, because at its root, what you're getting at is the fact that it's how insecurity manifests in female relationships, okay? Yeah. Because
I think it's okay to feel that. I think it's natural in like female, in anyone, that you're like, oh, okay, this is happening to them. But at the end of the day, you kind of put your insecurity aside and you're like, I am so happy for them and my time will come. And like some females will use that as motivation and be I can do this too. Like she can do it, I can do it. But some people will just try to like, you know,
make you feel below them.
Yeah.
I like that you said that, because I do think, and I'm not saying that I haven't been jealous at times.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's so natural to feel it. But it's how you take that
and how you use that to move forward. Because I do think jealousy shows a sign of you wanting more. Yeah. And if something...
I think that's great.
Yes. For some reason, if something strikes you or triggers you in that sense, I think you have to be reflective and not react in the moment. Be like, why do I feel that kind of way? And that requires self-awareness, okay? Because I do think when you're younger, you tend to not even pause to think as to why you're reacting that way. Yeah. You just jump into immediate, like, put that person down.
Yeah.
Instead of just, like, taking a step back and allowing this to be about them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I do think I do tend to... I attract different personalities. Like, I do think if you look at my friend group as a whole, I don't have a pattern. Like, I do think I do. Yeah. Yeah, I think you have more of a pattern.
Yeah.
I do think as a whole, like, I do have a spectrum of friends.
Yeah.
Because I've gotten to a point, too, where I think different people fulfill different parts of my soul.
That's true.
And so... And I know, depending on what I'm going through, like there are people that I just naturally gravitate towards because I do think that they can maybe understand a little bit more or whatever the case may be. But I do think because of all of this, like I've seen how it's manifested in different ways. Because I'm at a point right now, we were talking about this on our earlier segment of jealousy to me looks a little bit different now, because before jealousy used to look like as okay, my levels of jealousy or whatever however you want to call it has evolved. I think once upon a time it came down to if I thought you were prettier or looked hotter or whatever.
Okay.
And I think
I mean, yeah, you kind of like idolize them and you're like, I want to be your best friend.
agreed.
Yeah.
And now I'm at a point where
Me with Selena Gomez growing up in Wizards of Waverly Place. I was like, you're so beautiful. Your best
okay,
friend.
that's still you though. There's like
I love you if you're watching.
congratulations on the engagement. You like deserve all the happiness in the world.
Rocket. That Marquise Diamond.
We love it. But I do think, again, it's looked very different because now the people that I'm intimidated by, or maybe even a little bit could instigate some jealousy, are the people that like fully own their shit, stay in their lane, and aren't even fucking batting an eye towards what I'm doing. Okay?
They don't care. They're so busy, and if you're doing all this stuff, it's because you're not busy enough. You know.
And so I do think, and again, but even in those times where I sometimes maybe like something makes me feel a certain kind of way, I do think I have to be very introspective in those moments and think, and honestly, 9 out of 10 times, it comes down to the fact because, I mean, I'm going to be very transparent on the podcast. I think a lot of my insecurities recently, and not even recently, I would say since like my quarter life crisis, have stemmed from feeling like a lack of purpose or a lack of like a North Star in my life, in which I think we're very different in this, but I feel like my ultimate purpose in this lifetime is not yet clear to me. And I think I've always been, I tend to
not though. I feel like it's like communication and relationship and community and like.
Well, no, I agree.
You are that person that people come to like ask for advice. Like you were always that person.
So, okay, I will say, but what I mean at 25, it's been hard because I've always put myself, I do think I tend to be like a generalist. Like I'm not like tooting my own horn. I think I can be put in different situations and figure it out. Yeah. Like I'm a problem solver. I will give 100% into whatever I'm placed at.
Yeah.
But again, that's not necessarily a good thing because I do think because my talents weren't like super niche where I could like find my path early on as opposed to you. Like I think like since you came out of the womb, it's like we knew.
I was like crayons, drawing,
like art. Exactly. Yeah. Like we knew that. And I think for me, it's been a little bit hard to.
But I just did that stuff earlier. Like I went through a whole phase of like cake making and da-na-na-na, you know, like.
Which is what I think I've like, and I do think maybe that's why I think thanks to seeing like a real life example of somebody like figuring out their path earlier on in life, I think it also motivated me. Like again, I think let's just use you and I as an example, which is not like necessarily the best example because we are sisters and we are blood.
Yeah.
But I do think it's a good example of like when somebody has found something that you currently don't have. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's like, I do think there's not even a second that goes by that I'm like, I am so unbelievably happy and proud of you. And I will be your number one supporter at any stage and everything that you do in life. Oh.
That was so nice. Did you hear that? Say it again.
But because of at the same time, I've used that to catapult me
possible, yeah,
to show that it's possible and also catapult me into like my own journey of what that looks like.
Yeah.
And so I don't think if I hadn't really experienced that up close with having somebody like you, I don't think I would even have done this podcast, because I do think this podcast is me taking like a huge leap into that direction of figuring out like how I can make an impact, how I can help others. Like, I think that's ultimately like my why in all of this.
You already do this with all your friends on the daily. Like, you are the person that they call. Like, now it's just to like try to reach like a bigger audience. And I mean, we talk on the phone every single day anyways. We might as well blare it out to the world, whatever nonsense we're talking about.
No, agreed. But I do think so. With all that being said, though, I think that was just like a real life example of how you can take something like jealousy or whatever you want to call it and like turn it into a good.
Yeah.
But I do think it's also taken
turn it into drive. Yeah.
Yeah, turn it into drive. Exactly. But I do think it's also because, and again, I think maybe we figured this out a little bit early, because I do think that we had a very healthy example of what female energy and female dynamics
between the both of us.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's why it was almost scary going out into the real world and then having such like opposite ends of the spectrum experiences. And I was like, oh my God, like people can be kind of crazy. I'm just going to go back to my sister. Like she's my safe space. But it's also like once you do find people, like girls that actually fill your cup, like those are some of the most healing relationships I've had as well. Like girls will heal hearts that they did not break, you know? And you cannot say that about
I've
intimate
healed
relationships.
several, okay?
Yeah. Listen, I healed all yours too, okay? So
That's true,
don't
that's
come
true.
for me right now. I
No,
started
not you.
first.
I'm saying like across the board, like all
okay.
my friends. But they've also healed mine. So.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why it's like, it's hard. You just have to pick them carefully, like with anything in life.
Agreed. And I think also too, like, I think the biggest thing when it comes to with anything in life in terms of like the kind of energy that you attract, and I said this now multiple times, but when I did hit rock bottom and it really forced me to look within me and learn about the right kind of people, like maybe not the coolest girl on paper, but like, does she make me feel good at the end of the day?
I helped you with that. The whole cool girl on people. Growing up, I was not cool, believe it or not. Okay?
The girl you see up here.
Went through so much drama to get here. But like, I wasn't the coolest girl. I was like I was in my room drawing. Like, I didn't really go out that much. Like, I was just always being a hermit and doing arts and crafts or whatever. I was kind of a little freaky. But like, I think that even the type of friends that you attract now that I love are like...
Oh, you're completely like morphed into my friend group now.
Exactly.
Which
like,
you had wanted nothing to do with.
I did it because they're all like fake and just very no zhuzh, no authenticity.
No sriracha.
Not tobacco sauce, no cholula. But I just feel like because of our dynamic, and you know, I'm kind of like more like weird and wild and like just kind of in my own thing. I think that helped you like realize like, oh, because we always like make the joke that if we weren't sisters, we wouldn't be friends. Like, you're not the normal type of personality that I seek out because you are very logical minded. You are very here grounded. Like, I'm very like, let's go play in a garden of flowers. Like,
I'm like, that's not efficient. And
yeah, that's not efficient. I'm going home. I'm going to do some math or whatever. I don't know. But like, I think that helped open up your mind. Like, oh, this type of energy fills my cup more. And it's how I always say, like, some people are fountains and some people are drains. And you had a lot of drains in the house before.
I do think a big part of my journey came down to starting to sync my mind and my body. And what I mean by that was really learning to listen to my body in terms of how I felt when I am with these people.
Yeah.
Because I think, because my journey started with like gravitating towards people that were the cool kids. Didn't really matter necessarily like what they stood for or any of these things. It was just like, as long as I blended in and didn't stick out, like I was safe.
Yeah.
But I think now, and this is I'm not saying I'm perfect by any means, but I do think this is something I'm now, before, never really evaluated. And now this is something I'm constantly evaluating, in which like I leave a setting with a friend and I'm like, do I feel good or do I feel exhausted?
I think that's the biggest part. How you feel with them, yes. But when you leave, I am such a like, I hermit out and I need to recharge alone. Like, I can't. You like to recharge with people. You're a really?
What do you mean?
You're such a community person.
I'm like a introvert extrovert where like I can definitely put it on around people and I like being around people, but I like need my alone time. I'm married to an extrovert. Ryan's an
okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
Before you used to go out more though.
I used to, but okay, that's funny. I used to go out more because it was almost the busier I was, the less I really had time to pay attention to like what was going inside of
the
me.
distractions. Yeah. I feel like
I spent a lot of time being distracted.
yeah, that's true. I could see. And I mean, when you're in college too, like you go out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. But I feel like that's something that every time I hang out, like every time I leave from hanging out in a friendship dynamic, whatever, I really pay attention. I'm like, am I feeling drained? Like, do I need to steer clear from everyone for a week? That's when I know I'm like, oh, I'm going to limit my time with this person because it doesn't feel good. And it's not like you have to make it like You don't fill my cup. Like, you don't have to make it a thing. You just like take note of how you're feeling afterwards. It's how they say. Have you heard that thing on TikTok where they're like,
You mean an article?
I read an article called TikTok University. No, but it's how they're saying that your body will tell you when you do not feel good in an intimate relationship. How you'll constantly be sick. This girl is getting constant UTIs, like all these things. The moment she broke up with him, she was immediately healthier, felt better than she had ever had. Like your body will give you signs. You just have to like actually be listening to it. Yeah.
No, you really do.
It's fascinating. I think it takes time to develop that. I think it takes age and therapy.
It takes a lot. It takes a lot of time to really be able to.
Because it's hard. I could see it when you're younger, where you just want to fit in with the crowd, like sticking out like a sore thumb. It's hard. It's hard. You don't necessarily want to be that person, and you do want to be invited to the parties and everything. I went to art school, so it's like a little bit of a different vibe, but the film kids were the cool kids, and I would still try to be friends with them. Like, I wanted plants on the weekends. You sacrifice the quality to just have a good fucking time. Yeah.
And I also will say, so going back to the people pleasing, when you really learn and start to do the work that you have to, you immediately, your aura or whatever you want to call it, just like
your life up levels completely.
Up levels entirely. Because I do think that by me realizing, because I think a big thing, people pleasing, started becoming a trigger word for me. And that's when I realized where I cared so much about people thinking I was nice. Like when you heard Pam, I wanted everybody to know Pam is nice. And I think it really took two things. One, realizing that as nice as I was, I still fucking had people who hated me.
Yeah, it's like nothing will ever be enough.
Nothing was ever good enough. So like, why am I spending so much time trying to make all these other people around me happy with who I am, when at the end of the day, I'm the one going to bed with myself every single day and I'm not at peace. And so fuck it. Like that's ultimately what it took. And then the other part was when I really started to learn to say no, when I all of a sudden...
Boundaries.
And it wasn't even whether it's boundaries or I started learning how to mirror in a different way. Before I was mirroring what you wanted me to say, what you wanted me to do. And then I started mirroring what you're pouring into my cup. If you're pouring...
You don't like that, do you?
And suddenly you realize, or I realized, that I started losing a lot of friends. And people had something to say.
Yeah, the only people that are freaking mad about you having boundaries are the people that were benefiting from your lack of boundaries, you know?
And so that's what it really, I think, pushed me to really start realizing that when people think of me, I no longer wanted nice. I would love to be called kind. I do think I'm very kind-hearted.
Kind, yeah.
But I no longer, nice, just to me, and I'm not saying that like this is always.
I think of Selena Gomez when I think of kind.
Oh, love her. Or Hilary Duff.
Kind.
Can you tell we're like fucking Disney people over here?
I love that.
Bring back Disney Channel, okay? OG Disney Channel.
Disney, I work for you, please.
Yeah, I mean you're still young.
I'm young. Since when was I not young?
No, I mean like you're a Gen Zer. I'm a millennial, so like it would make more sense that I'm like obsessed with that.
But that's the word. Like going back to it, that's the word kind. Like you've never. Kind, I feel like you can have kindness and also carry boundaries, but you do it in a kind way. The way you carry yourself.
Nice has a connotation of like
but I'm not
boundaries.
available for that. Like I am doing something with myself, whatever. But when you hear someone mean, they're like actually out there trying to be mean. But kind is different, and I love that idea of it. I feel like for a long time I was just like, well, like you really can't. I feel like I've always spent so much time with myself. I was like, whatever. That person doesn't like me. They don't really know me, you know? But then I like got into a mentality of like, you're going to be a villain in someone's story. You might as well give them a show. And I was like, well, I'm doing what I love. I'm staying in my lane. I'm not stepping on anyone to get to where I want to go. I'm truly just focused on watering my own grass. And if that makes you uncomfortable, that's your problem and you need to figure that out, but I'm gonna keep going. You know?
Agreed. Like learning that what people project onto you,
it's not about you.
It's not about you.
It was never about you.
And I think that definitely took some time to get through. But at the end of the day, so going back to the fact that I do think that once I started saying no, and mirroring in a different kind of way. I think I just naturally, a lot of friends, like it wasn't even me having to do or say anything. It was more so of like, I no longer we're not on the same wavelength anymore. And like
you're starting to vibrate at a different frequency and they will naturally
fall off.
Weed off. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It doesn't vibe with them anymore. And that's fine. That's great. You want to do that. The earlier, the better. You're going to have so much more peace in your life.
So at the other flip side of this, so now that it took some time to get here. Mm-hmm. I don't think it'll ever be like 100%. I think the whole point is that we're all evolving and we're all changing, and the way we look in life, it's all going to ultimately, we're never going to be, I'm not the same person I was at 20 years old as I am now at 30.
Yeah.
And so I do think because of that, it's just going to be a never ending cycle of you having to continuously like sync the two, like syncing how you're feeling in, and I'm not even talking, let's like any relationship in life. Okay. Like whether it's a working relationship, whether it's a personal relationship, like I do think you have to learn to understand like where you're not feeling 100%.
Yeah.
And doing something about it. But on the other side, I am going to say, so now that I am at a point, kind of going back to the birthday dinner and really looking around and just feeling like overwhelmingly grateful for where I've come, because I do think female relationships had such a connotation of like heartbreak and insecurity once upon a time for me personally. Yeah. And now it's gone to a point where I wholeheartedly will always have space and prioritize these relationships over sometimes like even my own current partner, because you are right. Like these are women that have helped mend my broken heart when it wasn't even theirs to break. Yeah. These are the women that have showed up during some of the lowest points in my life. And so that's why I do have a little...
They almost know you on a more even intimate level than your intimate partner.
Because the things that we talk about and the things that they can...
And it was never even physical. Like it was like, it's so emotionally deep that it's like some things that your partner will never even hear, like some of your deepest, or can't even thoughts.
Like sometimes your partner can't even understand. Like your partner's never going to know what it's like to be a woman in corporate America. Your partner's never going to understand certain things that we just naturally have to deal with.
Yeah,
and so I wholeheartedly agree with that statement. Like I just think they know you at such an intimate level. And then the other part is, I also think that they've kept me the most in check of like, I do think that
you've kept me in motherfucking check. I mean, you're my sister, so there's a different level of like how brutal we can be with each other. But we've always like very much like, that doesn't look good. Keep an eye on it. I feel like with a friend, I'd be like, I don't think that doesn't sound great.
And we're not talking about superficial shit. Like, it's like, no. I mean, we do the usual, like, you need to fucking change that outfit. But, like, in terms of, like, that behavior doesn't look cute on you. Or, like, this new quality that you're picking out,
or
not cute.
This person you're hanging out with, that's not great. You know, like.
So I do think it's also, like, female relationships bring an additional level of accountability to your life that is rare to come by, but from a place that stems from just like
caring
and
it's like a motherly almost love. Like, yes, you've noted this and you want to make sure that they're taking note so they don't get hurt. It's an unconditional type of love almost.
It truly is. And I also think that's why I struggle. And I think I'm saying this because I'm older now and obviously I've just experienced a little bit more, but I do think that's why I struggle with any time like women are going through that like enamorment stage with somebody new and they completely forget about their friends and suddenly they're like changing plans to make it work with some new guy or whatever the case is. That is something that I just do not hold space for at this table. Okay, these are the women that have been there. Don't take them for granted.
We've all been there,
and I've been the girl to cancel, and that's why I think
it makes you mad looking back now.
It like, really,
what the fuck? Why did I?
When I let down friends that needed me at that time. Yeah. Because it hurts to say, and even though we're sisters, we can admit this. Like there have been times that I haven't been there when you needed me, and you remember that. And the fact that I ever made you feel less than, like it is a hard pill to swallow. And so I can't change the past, but I can change obviously and like course correct where needed. And so that is something that I think is very important just for all women, like protect those relationships and continue to invest in them because it is very
those are the lifers. Those are the lifelong friends through anything. Your intimate relationships, like I hope they last long. Of course, I'm not saying otherwise. But like God forbid you go through a divorce, you go through anything tough in life, like your female friendships, those are the ones that are going to leave you food at your door when you can't cook for yourself. They're going to be the ones that if you go through a divorce and you need someone to take care of the kids, drop off the kids. Like, I will take care of, like, they will show up, you know?
I will say that's why I do think, like, even though we get older and your time becomes even more valuable, things happen, you get married, buy a house, have kids, whatever, however that all looks like, you have to make space and make time for these people in your lives. And so maybe not, it doesn't look the same. Like, it's not like we're back in college and you can see them 5 times a week. I'm not saying that, but I do think it's important to be intentional with your time.
Intentional. And I will say, even just like being adults in general, like the way I schedule out my plans, I'm like, okay, pull up your calendar. Are you free 3 weeks from now on the 20th to the like, but you're being intentional about it. You're not just like, oh, I'll see you when I see you type of thing. But that's anything with adulthood. You have to be like marking things, you know, and holding space for that. Yeah, 100%. When you jumped off the episode, I didn't know that's how you were jumping it off, like saying that we were each other's first example of like a true friendship. And I don't know why I'm coming to the realization right now.
Of what?
That you were my first friend.
Oh my God. Aw, that's pretty wholesome, not gonna lie.
Am I drunk? I just feel like, I don't know, I just like, I didn't even
We were very lucky.
Yeah, we were very lucky to have that. And I love you so much. No, but I feel like I'm coming into the realization right now, and I feel so lucky that I also got an unconditional version of that, because I think if I had started my journey of like having female friendships without our experience together, I would have been very traumatized for like
very
much
lost,
longer
probably.
and not been open to it because of the trauma. But you instilled such a strong foundation for like what it could be, even though we're related and like we have to love each other. Well, that's not true. That's not true. We don't have to love each other even if we're related. But it set a bar for what it could be.
Yeah.
You know? And not that anyone else will ever match up to you, but I feel like I've given it a real shot, and now I have like people that I know are going to be in my corner till like forever, you know? Mm-hmm. So thank you for setting that bar.
Oh my God.
I just got so emotional.
Guys, if there's one thing I love, it's when the Aries comes out. Like, it doesn't
I'll
come
be like,
out often.
bang.
She's like gaslighting me 90% of the time, and then the 10% comes out, and I'm like, that was really sweet, but I don't know how to react.
I'm so mean all the time.
I'm like, are you well?
That was just really sweet.
And the very last thing I think I'll say on all of this,
if you pick them wisely, that is like some of the most important people you will ever have in your life. But it's like with anything, if you pick your partner, your intimate partner wisely, that is like one of the most important things you will ever have in your life. It can make or break your life. Mm-hmm. I think picking your intimate relationship just as wisely as you do your friendships can make or break your life. And I'm not even being dramatic. It's because the people that are around you will truly add or take away. It's math.
Sometimes when you get really serious, I'm like, I don't know what to say.
You're like, yes. I just feel very strongly about that, like picking the people that you have around you. I feel like I was such an introvert for so long because I didn't necessarily know how to pick people that I always felt kind of weird hanging out with people. And I was like, I have this weird sensation. I feel like I've always been pretty intuitive and like connected with my mind and heart. But like, I think as you get older, you start becoming more aware of what that actually feels like. And you're like, oh, it was because of this person's energy. So I think I held off. I was like more of a hermit for a long time because I didn't know how to handle that yet. So I'm very, very big on who you hang out with, who you pick to have around you. And I'm seeing my friends and the people that they choose around them, you know? I usually have like pretty authentic, zany, like
no, but I do think, but it goes back to the fact that like I think we had good examples for each other. Like you are a very authentic person, and I think I used to gravitate towards people that like had a strong ego and like look, again, I think the ego was definitely like a big thing. Like, I
Yeah.
think I was filling my own ego by being friends.
With the people that had an ego.
And now I'm at a point where I'm like, that's not what I care about anymore. And if anything, I'm like,
I think our relationship pushed you into that.
So, okay, let's just, to wrap up the episode, I will say,
Pick them wisely,
Pick
and you
'em
will
wisely
have a great
and-
fucking life.
and protect them.
Yeah.
Protect those friendships and protect, like,
Just as much as you do your intimate relationships. Just as much.
I love that.
Yeah.
So thank you for being my most intimate relationship. I love you. I love you all, and see you next week.
See you guys.